Brace yourself.
I'm sorry, what? I got raided by Cross Hyperu. And here I was thinking I was going to have a microphone off stream tonight. Well, good evening, friend. I hope you had a great stream. I have been working on a variety of projects for airports for Microsoft Flight Sim. And tonight I am in Flight Sim 2020, specifically because my client needs me to create airports that are going to be, what you could say, off the bat compatible with both sims. So basically, folks, if you're new to the channel, my name is DigiDriver. I am a flight sim streamer that heavily slants towards airport scenery development for Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and 2024. I have a newly released Higginsville Municipal Airport released for Flight Sim 2024, available on flightsim.to. You can just look me up there as DigiDriver, and I can also put the link in chat right now. So let me go ahead, grab that link just in case you're curious. And it is going to be here, but I am also working on scenery development for small airports and municipal airports. I'm currently working on airports for the greater Lakeland, Florida area, including this airport called Foxtrot Alpha 08. I think it's Fantasy of Flight, and it is an airport that actually has a hangar that's privately owned by someone that actually has some classic aircraft in it. Depending on how much time I have, I might be able to get together some classic models to put into it, unless the plans are different. But I'm also going to be doing a few things in the area, including creating a special group of buildings just down the road from this airport. If you're familiar with the area, I'm only going to say one word: Sun Tracks. That's all you need to know. Thank you, Cross Hyperu. Really appreciate you stopping by, friend. And of course, folks, anybody that's been lurking, if you don't know Cross Hyperu and you like flying on VATSIM, or you like getting the 411 on flights in air traffic controlled airspace, you want to go ahead and follow Cross Hyperu, a friend of the channel and somebody that really takes time to explain the process of flying on VATSIM and flying in a traffic control airspace, literally from soup to nuts. We are working on adding some aprons or ground textures to this area, and I think what I'm going to do is create another kind of gravel runoff area, so that you kind of like get the water to go into this lake here. Only problem, of course, is that I have not mastered terraforming, and I don't know how to really make it work for me in the sim. So these areas are going to be flat, but at the same time, I think they're generally flat anyway, so I'm not really worried about it. Let me double check something though. Oh, hold on. Aprons are gone. And this is concrete apron 3. This is probably going to be concrete runoff 2. And the idea behind the runoff is that it's basically going to be just a gravel area with rocks. Now, let me set the texture fall off so that the texture kind of bleeds past the border. And I'm going to grab this and go to the concrete materials and look up concrete gravel, put it in, and blammo, there we go. So you got rocks there, and I think I need to set the tiling for 13 and the opacity to 206. When we do that, the rocks get smaller and the image gets a little bit more blended. So let me go ahead and switch the view a little bit. Okay, This is a grass strip runway. And actually, this is a grass strip airport. We've got cross runways, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think this is the hangar where all the classic aircraft are. It could be that one over there. I don't know that for a fact. It could be. I need to get more, I guess, information about them. These are default buildings, by the way, and this is photogrammetry that's surrounding the airport. But this is part of a project I'm working on, and I also have other projects I'm working on, like Lafayette Regional Airport in Louisiana and Plymouth Municipal Airport in Massachusetts, along with many others that I haven't started, and I just keep adding to the list. But I appreciate you all stopping by tonight, and if you've ever been curious about the process of creating scenery for Microsoft Flight Sim, I do these kinds of things on a regular. So you're welcome to ask questions. You're welcome to ask me about the process in general. And I can tell you that you can create most of the airport stuff literally inside the sim. It's just that if you want to create custom objects, you're going to need to use a different program like 3D Studio Max, or in my case, Blender. You create 3D objects there, you can export them, you can import them into the sim and place them in the sim. That's how you get those custom towers, custom buildings, even certain things that are animated. So right now I'm currently working on fleshing out the areas where you have taxiable surfaces like these concrete sections here, and it feeds into the grass area. And I'm not sure if this grass airport or grass runway airport has taxi signs, so I got to do some more research. This is the first time I've really doubled down on creating an airport that's going to be inside of that's going to be a grass strip airport, I should say. These are default aircraft that are inside the sim. They're sim objects. And unfortunately, with this airport, I'm dealing with some height issues, and I think it's because the airport is on a photogrammetry rich or photogrammetrically dense portion of Florida. I could try to design it without having any photogrammetry here. I think a lot of folks are going to fly with photogrammetry turned on. I might have to spend some time figuring out what happens when you turn the photogrammetry off and what the impact is. I don't know if that also affects elevation, but I'm going to try to figure out what to do. Oh, you noticed that, did you, Kev? Hello, my friend. Welcome. And of course, my friend Kev Mikwa is a fellow streamer as well. Does cargo ops a lot in X-Plane, and he says just false advertising. Well, I can shut up if you want. Well, okay. Confession time. I was no audio ops until one of my friends stopped in Rommel 01, and then I turned on the audio and just increased the ASMR, so to speak, of just the in-game sounds. And then of course Cross Hyperu gave me a beautiful raid of 22, incredible. And then I was just like, okay, I gotta yap. And of course, folks, if you're not following Rommel 01, please do so as well. Another friend of the channel. But as you can tell, this airport does it is home to a bunch of classic aircraft, if you will. These are literally just default or stock sim objects that have interiors, but I think they're simplified interiors. Actually, this isn't that simplified. Wow. Yeah, so DC3, anyone? Wow. This is kind of nice, but I'm not sure if I want to keep this totally in here. Although I will say it's kind of fun to have a plane you can look into. Who would have thought of that years ago in Flight Sim? So, as I struggled to get my bearings again, I have been working on apron textures for the airports, and I am trying to, oh yeah, lots of polygons. Not that many, but more than zero. So I do have to be sometimes judicious in my use of additional objects. And in FS 2024, levels of detail are are I guess you could say fiercely guarded to definitely prevent issues with performance. And I think this is mostly due to the new sim being available both for PC and Xbox. So they're trying to optimize performance. But while you are all here, let's go ahead and do a little bit of apron work to show you at least part of the process. I did some apron work on the northwest side of the airport, and now I'm going to do some apron work here. So we're going to create a few aprons that we're going to use to designate concrete versus dirt areas or grass areas. So what we do is we make sure we're in the aprons group, and I'm seriously thinking about creating some long form content where I take you through a scenery development series, soup to nuts, on how to actually build airports. I've tried doing this many times before on stream and failed. I think it's literally because the long form approach is the only approach that makes sense when it comes to educating people on the process of creating an airport. And that's because if you're going long form, that means you're creating tutorial videos. That means you're creating content people can look at, pause, restart, stop and take notes on, and try out for themselves and keep going. And then you basically have that content available, I guess you could say, in perpetuity, so that people can continue to reference it. Only problem, of course, with tutorial content for Flight Sim is that eventually it's going to be outdated. But I mean, it's a wonderful ride up until that point, because then people will be able to create their own airports and stuff. And I'm thinking about doing that as a function of creating member-related content. So, if you guys permit me just a moment of shameless plugging, I am in the process of creating member content, and to do that, I've created a Buy Me a Coffee account. Ramal, this is 2020 right now, but this scenery will also be compatible with 2024. But it's developed in 2020, so it can be used in both sims. My Buy Me a Coffee account is what I'm using to create member subscriptions. Think of it kind of like a low-key Patreon account. And basically what I'm doing is I am creating a way to be able to basically have supplemental income to be able to do things like take care of myself and current financial obligations, also to potentially, hopefully, in the future, supplant channel income and be able to fund and support scenery development efforts. I want to say this up front. The reason why I'm doing that is not so that I can keep content behind a paywall. It's my hope to be able to release content into the wild and have it available for free. What I'm hoping to do is to drum up support from people that have a vested interest in wanting to see more of that content and see it on a more convenient level. So essentially, for example, if you're somebody that likes that kind of content and you don't really want to wait and you want to see it as soon as possible, then you're going to be separate from the people that are actually mass consumers of content, because you'll get access to it first. You'll get access to it with behind the scenes, I guess you could call them, special features like additional explanations of content. I'd say at least 97 to 99% of the content that's going to be released into the wild is going to be available for most folks to get for free. I always want to do that, but I want my supporters to know that I'm going to actually support them on that level by giving them additional things that are unique to their levels of support. Have essentially scenery compatibility between 2020 and 2024 is virtually flat out identical. The only reason that scenery is not going to be compatible in 2024, that is, that scenery will literally not work, is if you did things the likes of which leaned heavily on 2020 specific things or code or aspects of the program which are not really something that you would be able to use in the new sim. And for lack of a better phrase, if you did things that really did some edge casey kind of aspect of what all this did, then I think what happens is you're gonna wind up being in a place where, like, there's certain things, certain functions, certain aspects of scenery are not going to work with a new sim. And by and large, so far, fortunately, very few products suffer from that. There are some things that happen as a result of a product being released in 2020 and just being straight shoved into 2024 that don't really work the same way anymore. And I think that's largely due to things like satellite imagery being slightly out of place, or maybe WASM instructions or XML that's slightly different. And the XML might have something to do with, for example, levels of detail. But I do not believe the vast majority of airports that most folks purchase, whether it's through the marketplace or through third-party outlets like, for example, Sim Market or any other number of outlets, whatever they are. I remember, I somewhat remember their names, but I forget what they are. I think it's just that scenery is going to be way more compatible with 2024 that was made in 2020 than aircraft are. And I think a lot of aircraft off the bat are probably going to be compatible. It's just that there may be functions or bits and pieces that don't work. And the folks that really had to go out of their way to make the aircraft perform the way they wanted it to in the sim are probably the ones that have to spend time focused on making those changes, I think. As you can tell, clearly there's a lot to do in terms of, a lot to think about in terms of content, in terms of compatibility. But I also think that the, what am I trying to say? The things that certain companies do for their airplane logic simulations, some of them I think put most of the logic in a separate program outside the sim. So I think in terms of whether or not that would work for them, they're in a much better spot right off the bat. At least I think they are. Okay. So we'll keep some of the ground merging in, and we will slip a little bit of the imperfections of the tarmac back out. Now, unfortunately, that means that if I do it that way, there's still going to be aircraft that are there. So I may take the liberty of covering over those pieces or doing something else where that is largely covered. All right. Sorry for the delay. I was just helping Mrs. DG. I am probably going to make the opacity almost like 100%, and I'm going to rely on ground merging to make it a little bit dirty. I think I could do the same thing that I was working on with Lafayette by adding an extra layer of dirt to this. And I think I'm going to try this here, potentially for the sake of making it look better. But before I do that, let me just confirm what the tiling quotients were. There were 25 meters for tiling, which I think is the same thing that's here. And let me see what the... Oh, that's actually pretty close to what the concrete tile layouts were. I think the problem with this is that it's not grungy enough. So, can I paint out the shadows? No. I have to create a another apron to stick on top of it. But I think I'm going to go a slightly different direction. I'm going to do, let's see, if this is square one beige, let's do square one dark. What I'm probably going to do is overlay additional layers on top of the first one. So if I do square one beige, then we're going to create another apron right now, and we're going to create it on top of what we had before. So to do that, I'm going to probably get rid of this, hide the drawing surface, and then, let's see. Actually, most of this is quite grungy. So I think I know what I'm going to do. All right, so we're going to add another layer, and we're going to start. And this one's going to be a lot more rough. Actually, hold on. Let me stop myself again. I want to fix the runoff first. We're going to make the fall off 0.5 meters outside the edge, and we'll come back to that later if we have to. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to select probably a few areas like here, and we're going to try this as an experiment real fast. Okay, and we're going to make the priority 1 so it draws above the first layer. And we're going to do square one dark, like really dark, or like dirt gray. And then do coloration, and then we're going to really make this dark. It's like, oh no, Digi, what did you do? Don't worry, I'm experimenting here. Just keep it loosey-goosey. Okay, so what I need to do is to try to see if I can actually blend this together. And then make this a fall off of about 0.8. Does that make sense at all? Kind of not, and I think it's just because of the material chosen. So I have to play around with this. But, you see what I just did? Now we have an extra layer of grunge on top of this. And kind of, that's the intent. By basically drawing another layer of this stuff on top of it, then we're creating essentially the effect of certain areas being dirtier than others. So that's the idea. Now, of course, the problem with this is that it's kind of synthetic. So we kind of have to really kind of sort of mess with this. And this is where it starts to get tricky and kind of annoying, but if you know what you're doing, even if you don't, if you're just kind of trying to bring an extra layer of depth to the scenery, this is kind of a nice way to start. So this is a, a a taste of the kind of stuff that I'm trying to do with scenery development for small and municipal airports alike. I'm trying to push the boundaries of what's possible with both sims, and it takes practice. It takes really just a commitment to want to try to do something different than what you normally do. And in one sense, the more you mess with these numbers, the more you kind of start to feel your way around the kind of stuff you can do in the sim. So I'm not going for, like, 1000% realism. I'm just trying to figure out how to make this be a bit more three-dimensional and a bit more like, oh wow, there's a lot of traffic that goes through here, etc. But I guess it's going to take me a little bit longer to determine precisely where to put this stuff so that it's working really well. So you could say this works, and I think I'm going to need to do a fall off of like 2.2 meters, even 3. So if you pay attention, it kind of just blends out a little bit. I probably don't need to go more than 2 meters with this, and that's probably going to be good enough. And then I can probably duplicate this or move this entire piece around, and then you start to see what happens. You really start to get this idea of how this influences what happens in certain spots. So this is a great way to take default textures, default materials, and turn them into more believable things. I mean, I remember reading a post, I think on fsdeveloper.com, about how somebody basically said, oh, yeah, I just combined a whole bunch of layers on my scenery, and that's how I kind of simulate and give the taxiways and stuff all the effects that I want them to have. And it's like, oh, okay, so you can do that with default stuff, which makes it easy for people, even that don't know much about the process of creating their own materials, to make a significantly more believable experience for others just by creating something kind of like this. And some things kind of repeat themselves as well, but let me think. Now you have this extra layer, and the opacity is such that you can kind of play with it, and you can see what happens when you move the slider around. It really does kind of give that extra really lived in feeling to an area. And this is probably something I'm going to continue to work on to a great extent, because it really adds to a very real, very lived in sense to places like this. Are there better ways to do it? Of course there are. I'm essentially kind of short on time at the moment, but the idea is to make stuff like this really pop as efficiently and as quickly as possible, and without thinking too hard about it. Because I'll give you perspective, when a scenery developer is creating an airport, there's any number of ways you can take the design and the development and and whatchamacallit, the easiest thing that I can do that makes things more difficult for me is to basically say, oh, like, I want to do all the things. I want to do all the things. I want to make everything look perfect. And then what happens is I go nuts. I burn out. I get tired of deving because my stuff doesn't look as good as, like, say, for example, Fly Tampa, like, Vertical Sim Studios or whatever. And it's like, oh man, my stuff sucks. Like, I can't do this right. All the while forgetting that every one of those companies had to start somewhere. They had to start from zero, just like I did. It just so happens that a lot of those companies, they wind up scaling up more people, more projects, stuff like that, because they have the resources, they have the time, they have the money, they have the ability to bring all that stuff to bear. They have the manpower. So this is the MSFS SDK tool, and this is the one from FS 2020, in fact. So, it's amazing what you can do with just literally just a base level sim. Let me put this up to like 55. This is really going to make this pop. And when you zoom in, you can see that the tiles are there. And I think I'm going to make this completely 100%. And now I think I can actually leave that the way it is. And let's really sell this and show it to you in the usual flight sim view. So now you have one layer of concrete and another layer that shows you additional dirt. And the tile representation's kind of not the best, but for a stock material with an additional layer on top that really gives you the idea that this place has been used by a lot of aircraft, the effect is immediate and it's instant. So this is the kind of stuff that I'm trying to do on a regular basis for scenery development for MSFS, and hopefully one day for X-Plane as well, because X-Plane is an amazing sim with a lot to offer, at least in my opinion. So I need to be able to spend time doing the things in order to actually make this be better or be more appealing to others. So unfortunately, I only have so many hours in a day, and I have to take care of other very important things as well. If I did this full time, then yes, I would have the ability to spend more time creating these things. The other alternative that I have is to be able to pick at a better level just the projects that I perform and take time doing them, and just accept that, hey, Flight Tampa level, not Flight Tampa level, but Flight Tampa level of time spent on a scenery is just not going to be something I do on a regular basis, because I have an IRL job that I need to do to take care of my family and pay the bills and stuff like that. And that's just how it works. For some people do not go past the hobbyist developer stage for things like FS 2020, and honestly, That's okay, because that's what they do. I keep flirting with the idea of doing this on a regular basis, and I think the reason why I do is because I have a what I'm trying to say. I have a clearer idea of why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do this so that people that people that fly out of airports like Fantasy of Flight are going to see these levels of detail, and they're going to sit up and pay attention, so that when they fly into a place like, for example, Higginsville or Warrensburg, or I don't know, Skokie, Illinois, or Champaign-Urbana or something, they're going to note that the buildings look like the buildings they walked into when they boarded a plane to fly to Kansas City or something like that. That's kind of the reason why I got into scenery development again, because I wanted to make airports for people and have recognizable landmarks for them to see, so that they would enjoy the experience more. That's where you folks come in. I mean, on the base level, on the lowest level possible, if you had no money, if you didn't like to talk to people a lot, and you didn't even want to be bothered with following, if all you do is lurk, you boost the channel algorithm. You want people to notice it, but if it's so good they don't notice. Right, right. I've talked about things like the uncanny valley before as well, where you try to make stuff that's so good and so realistic, and people will start looking at it and they'll start saying, "Oh no, wait, like I'm looking at like the microscopic level, or I'm looking at the pixel level, it doesn't look normal." And that's because you're looking at a texture like this at this range, whereas most of us are going to be in a Cessna, or like a Learjet, or a Boeing 747, and we're not going to pay too much attention to the ground textures. We're going to be focused more on flying the plane. But in some places, these levels of detail are just part of the big picture, and they're required. And default buildings, even though they have some things that are pseudo three-dimensional, don't cut the mustard, because you don't see hangars that look like this in real life. And that's not Asobo's fault. That's because the AI generated scenery picked this kind of structure to be here, and hey, I'll take this over absolutely nothing. I'll take this over a two-dimensional sprite, or whatever you want to call it, so that you can actually see something exists here. But humans being humans, we like seeing recognizable landmarks. We like seeing things that tell us, hey, this is a grass runway because we have, these cones in place that tell us that it's the side of the runway, or something like that. We like seeing recognizable features, which is why scenery development has been such a staple of Microsoft Flight Simulator for such a long time. And that's my story. To do this takes time. For some people, to do this takes time and effort and money. And some companies make a living doing this. Of course, some companies focus on extremely huge, extremely well-traveled, popular airports like LAX, JFK, Newark, London Heathrow, Dubai, Singapore. You have Sydney, Perth, the airports in Tokyo, airports in Germany, and it is what it is. I think I've purposely chosen the long road because it's going to give me the most freedom to not compete with really big companies. And yes, Kev, you're right. Working on an airport like London Heathrow is going to take you probably at the very least a solid year. And you're like, Digi, come on, you're making this stuff up. I mean, think about it this way. I think it was I'm gonna butcher this name no matter how much I try. So I'm just gonna use it the same way that I always do. So Drzecki Designs. Some people use Juvietsky or whatever you want to call it, but basically, the company that created a lot of airports in P3D created Newark. And I think they spent a solid 3 or 4 months just on ground textures alone. So you think about that. For XP, there we go. That's part of the picture. That's part of the issue. And, you know, disposable income being what it is, a lot of us like to hold on to as much of it as possible. And I'll be the first person to tell you, as a scenery consumer for many years before I dared to think about creating scenery, I was like, hey, I'm paying like 20, 25 bucks for an airport. I better get everything. And it's just becoming a scenery developer has made me more humble about stuff like that. It takes a long time to build an airport. Even a small airport takes a surprisingly long amount of time to get all the details down. Or to defeat your I want to do everything perfect impulse and step away. It depends on the sim. It depends on the tool set. It depends on the models. It depends on the scenery. It depends on the materials you have access to. It depends on a whole bunch of stuff. All this to say, if I could pick what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and I could cultivate a set of skills that would let me accomplish those things, I would have to imagine that scenery development would be one of those things, if not that thing. And then I could focus on going to airports, taking photography, or figuring out how those airports are laid out, creating those airport sceneries, and releasing them. You've made exactly one airport, which is still better than, I don't know, the vast majority of a bunch of other flight simulators that made nothing. And it's not because they're we're not better than they are. It's more like we decided to do something that a lot of other people chose not to do. And I want to keep doing this so that when folks fly out of airports and they look at something and they go, hey, thanks so much for putting this together. I recognize this place because you built it. That's the kickback. The funky pieces of paper with dead presidents' faces on them that come your way if you do that for a living, it's great, and it's something that I would like to make for a living, but also doing it well kind of, I guess, opens the door to doing that. Exactly. And Rommel, before I had the patience to realize that a lot of folks spend a lot of time to create this, I didn't have an idea how long it took. I didn't know how hard it was. It's not impossible, but it does take commitment. It does take drive, which is why I'm kind of pounding this out on stream right now. But transparency. Do I want to do this for a living? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen soon? Realistically, no. I need to flesh out the brand. I need to be committed. I need to not do a lot of other stuff, and focus on this and keep pounding it out. The good news is I've been doing this for a couple of years now. So it's most likely not going away anytime soon, unless I get to the point where I'm like, I can't do this unless I do everything perfect, which is going to completely burn me out, and then I'm going to step away from flight sim for a very long time, and maybe not come back to it for a good year or two or more, and that's going to short circuit the process. So I think I need to do two things. I need to have incredibly realistic expectations, like saying stuff like, okay, you're going to build airports that some people are going to like, that a lot of people are going to probably ignore, because a lot of people like to fly certain kinds of aircraft which don't go into small airports like this, especially grass airfields, that a lot of people are going to say are not on their radar because they like flying to bigger airports, and that's fine. I want to build these airports for the people that want to fly into them. So, seeing as how that's happening with these series of airports, I want to do a good job, essentially. All right, my friends, it is 11 p.m. Perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, we can attain excellence. That's actually a good quote, even if it's a paraphrase. It like to boil it down. It's kind of like if you shoot for the moon, you'll still land among the stars. But yeah, like the pursuit of perfection can produce excellence as long as you know to ease off the gas pedal and eventually slap a done label on something. And there's always going to be limitations to what you do. But that's my journey. Folks, you've been amazing. It's a privilege to have you guys here and listen to me yap on as I've been doing some scenery dev and talking about my aspirations for the future of this channel and my flight sim scenery dev career. I would very much like to do this for a living and be able to make my own schedule and be able to take way better care of Mrs. Digi than I do even now. I also wonder about the things that I do IRL and whether or not I need to pull back a little bit more from scenery dev and get a little bit more realistic. But oh, there we go, Vince Lombardi. The whole aspect of what I'm doing right now is testing the waters to see if I can actually do that. I would like to. That's why I have a buymeacoffee.com account. That's why I have options for folks to potentially sub or cheer or donate if it's their intention. That's why I tell people, if all you can do is say hello, please say hello. You don't know how much that means to me to have somebody say hi and to engage in chat. Donations and cheers and subs and buy me a coffee membership subscriptions, those are things that are great for moving the needle, but all of it put together makes for a great community, a great experience. And yes, I haven't forgotten. I think I do need to get around to figuring out why my Discord link sharing doesn't work anymore, but whatever, we'll take it a step at a time. I want to do this. I want to make these airports. This week kind of sucked. I came back from vacation and I got sick. Some folks want to create scenery, but they don't know how to get started. I might have to create and follow through with creating long form content so that I actually show people how to do it from scratch, especially with the latest changes, especially with the newest SDK updates which exist. I'm crazy enough to believe it can still happen. I just need to figure out how to do it. And that's what 99% of small businesses have to do on a regular basis, figure out how to do the thing. So if you've already followed me on my Discord or come to my Discord, you'll see the updates and the usual messages that I put on there from time to time. I will probably not be on tomorrow night. I think Mrs. Digi and I are going to take a break and we're going to probably check out some Christmas lights and have a little bit of fun before we go spend time with family this weekend. I think next week is going to potentially be a very good week for chilling and doing some good things, some fun things in both flight sim and other categories. Can I be totally transparent with you guys? This is sometimes overwhelming, and I'm not saying this is a sympathy poll. If you're concerned about that, I totally get it if you leave right now. I'm just being completely open. Pursuing something that's like a dream is scary. It's scary because you're literally putting your hobby up on a chopping block and turning it into a business. And I've kind of dismissed that already to say, hey, if this turns into a business and my appreciation for flight sim turns into something that I do for a living, I'm prepared to do other things for fun in my spare time. Because flight sim has come into and out of my life in various ways and at various times. And I think the point is I'm okay with building airports way more than flying fake planes, although I still like flying fake planes. What's scary is trying this and not being successful at it. What's scary is trying this and never really getting perspective and a bigger share of the market. But here's the thing. For the first time in about 2 years, I have a very, very clear idea of what it is I want to do. I want to build very small to municipal airports and maybe the occasional ultra small regional hub for jet operations, because I want to connect with people that learn to fly, that fly out of very small local airports, that fly out of extremely small hubs serviced by, the odd, E-Jet 175 or 737 600 or 700 or the odd A319. Most likely, like municipal airports or business jets and stuff like that, because those are the airports that I can actually focus on and spend time building up, that are probably going to be overlooked by at least 2/3 to 85% of the senior developer companies that are out there, which automatically means I'm going to have less competition and less pressure on me to produce great, great airports. And the thing is, it's like, oh man, like there are only so many airports to build. That's right. And the overwhelming majority of senior developer companies go after the bigger, very popular, huge hubs. And it's kind of like, first come, first serve. On occasion, you have 2, maybe 3 developers that focus on an airport like Philadelphia, or like LAX, or like San Francisco. Exactly, exactly. 2 years ago, I didn't know the difference between a loop cut and animating an object in Blender. 3 years ago, I didn't even consider, or I didn't consider the idea of using Blender. 4 years ago, I could have cared less about building an airport in Microsoft Flight Sim. And then 2022 happened, and I kind of refocused and I rebranded. Do I think I'd like to do this for a living? I'm going to say yeah, because life changes and you want to do great things. And I think right now, the thing that I do for a living, there's a shelf life on it. I'm just going to say that. And eventually what happens is you either have to pivot really quickly, or you have to figure out what else you're going to do with your time. And this is the other thing. I would like to be successful. I would like to be very successful. But of course, you have to make the commitment, the time to being better at your craft. And I think I'd like that. Which is why I'm putting this out there. If you want to be on the forefront of something, if you want to see this channel kind of grow semi-organically through support and through interesting and just, I guess, grassroots projects, then stick around, follow. If you feel so moved, cheer or donate or sub. If you feel so moved, go check me out at, buymeacoffee.com/digi123 and see what kind of stuff I'm up to. I think it's literally going to take some focused discipline and me saying, no, I'm not going to go out and do blah, 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 because I want to try to get this sign up and do all the things. But to have you friends along for the ride, to have you asking questions and supporting the growth, whether or not you put dollars on the table and say, hey, I want to give you my support, you're already giving me your support, and that's great. I guess it's going to take prayer, and I pray that the Lord God Almighty gives me wisdom to understand what my next steps are, in Jesus' name, because only He is going to give me the opportunity. I still have to, move my fingers and my mouse hand and build the things, but without His blessing, I have nothing. And I'm grateful for this upcoming opportunity to rest a bit, especially as we near Christmas Eve and I commemorate the birth of my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I pray that many, many more people come to know him as Lord, and that we all have a chance to rest up from the trials of this year and step into a new one. That's going to do it for me for tonight. I'm going to most likely keep plugging away and figuring out what's going to work best for this upcoming project, and certainly continue to build other projects as well. I feel comfortable doing this on a recurring basis and focusing more on scenery dev and less on flying. Although I'm not giving up on flying, I am going to do stuff with helicopters and with tube liners. Tube liners are probably still going to be more FS 2020 than FS 2024, but I don't know. I might grab the A320neo, the IndyBuild Neo, and take it for a flight in FS 2024 and see if recent updates have made the sim a bit more stable. Also, of course, I'm going to keep building airports for 2024 as well as 2020, and I said I was going to try the career mode. I guess, I don't know. I think I'm going to give him another month or two to work the kinks out and then see how it all works out. Because I've heard some people are still having issues with it. So, is what it is. Seriously though, shameless plug. If you want to get in on the ground floor of some potentially cool content opportunities in the future, feel free to take a look at my page. New small update. Nice.
Final approach checklist complete.
Hey. Thank you, Mwendo, for the 6-month Tier 1 resub. Your support is certainly appreciated, my friend. Thank you. Thank you so much. Great to have you here, and I certainly have not forgotten about Lafayette Regional for FS 2020. I certainly do still want to release it for FS 2020. I will say that the idea is I would also like to release it in FS 2024. We'll take it a step at a time. Again, folks, stay tuned to my Discord for updates and just live chat and things that I'm trying to do and steps that I'm trying to take to make this thing happen. I like messing around with things on the computer. I like having fun with this. This is actually fun. Because the dream is you make something that somebody really reacts well to. And even when they don't, it's another airport that gets built. So that's the dream. That's the kind of hard to peg dream, which I'm really hoping turns into something more. And yes, I'm not going to lie. It would be great to have some dollar signs behind it so I could take care of Mrs. DIGI some more. And you've already helped with that, so thank you so much. But at the same time, I think all of us, at least some of us, want to do something that's beyond the usual, beyond the ordinary. And I'm kind of hoping that that's what happens with this. Or that if it doesn't, then I continue on doing it anyway, but with even way more passion than before. Personally, I would like to do this for a living. I would like to do this full time. And I would like to do this to such an extent that I create something that's, bigger than me, that actually turns into something really beneficial for me and for the flight sim community at large. Of course, with everything you do in life, there's going to be ups and downs and trade-offs, and you're going to be going, oh, well, like, wow, I'm working on so many airports. This is stressful. It's like, well, yeah, you're running the company, DIGI. Did you think it was going to be super easy? No, it's not. But the adventure is most likely worth every bit of struggle and uphill climb that you do. My friends, it's a privilege catching up with each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm still kind of floored that I have as many viewers watching me right now blab as I do. And I would like to produce more content for you guys in the near future, for Plymouth, for Higginsville, Warrensburg, Villeneuve outside of Edmonton in Alberta, Canada, for other airports, like other airports in Florida and other airports, maybe even in other parts of the world. So, we'll figure it out. I really appreciate your support. And again, thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks so much for saying hello. And I hope that you get to see some more upcoming releases and content from me. I'm grateful to say I'm feeling much better than I did at the beginning of this week. And I'm almost about back up to 100%. Praise the Lord for that, because being sick sucks. And I just had a cold. I can't even imagine what some people are dealing with right now, so I'm just grateful. Again, feel free to stick around on Discord. If you're not there, I'm going to try to figure out how to get the Discord link up somehow. I don't like to put it in a command because I like to be able to make invites. And again, I'll keep working on the scenery grind. So, until next time, like I always like to say at the end of every stream, if you want true peace, you want the Prince of Peace, and that's Jesus Christ. Thanks, friends. Take care. Rommel, thanks so much for stopping by and saying hello. And stay tuned. I mean, the end of the year is coming, so I'm probably going to do 1 or 2 streams where I actually just kind of take a quick break and have like some fun playing some retro or some trucking or some racing. Do some stuff like at least once. And that'll probably happen on the break. So that'll probably happen late next week, I want to say. Maybe in the afternoon or evening hours. We'll see. And I will see what comes up next. I will probably take a nice warm drink at this point and maybe some soup and just chill and then figure out what tomorrow brings. So, let me see. We have like 10 people in chat right now. Why don't we pass the love on to somebody else and see who we can raid real fast? I think I know who we're going to say hello to. I think I do. So, let me see. I have this sorted high-low count. Who is flying right now? I think my friend is actually doing something. Ooh, I think I know exactly who we're going to say hello to. This person has been doing different content, and now that they're doing flight sim content, I'm going to go ahead and raid him and pass the love on to him. So we're going to raid Rich Gojira. Feel free to spam emails. Feel free to say hello. Really appreciate having all of you with me tonight. Thanks so much for your time, and God bless you all. Thanks so much for your support. You guys are amazing. Until next time. Bye.